It is 6:34. I'd like to call our public session of the meeting back to order. We just completed an executive session. Just kind of stepping into things. We got a lot on the agenda tonight. So with that said, could I get a motion from the board to approve the agenda for this evening?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
James, all those in favor? Aye. That carries. All right, in our packet tonight, we have one set of meeting minutes to approve, and that being from the meeting that occurred last month on December 12th, both the public meeting and executive session. Is there any items to note on there? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion, Mike.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tricia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that carries. All right, next up is announcements. Open it up to the board. Does anybody have anything to share this evening? Okay. All right. As noted on the agenda, correspondence, nothing's listed, but I will make note for the record. We did have one email to the full board concerning a school policy issue related to dress code. So just to read that into the record. I'm not aware of any unfinished business. If anybody has any, please let me know. All right. With that, Dr. Frame, I turn it over to you for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs, and Happy New Year, everyone. It's a little bit late in the month, but I don't think we've had an official board meeting since the end of December. Just a quick thank you. It seems like ages ago, but the holiday storm that we had, a thank you to our Buildings and Grounds Department for their incredible work for getting us cleaned out and making sure we're ready to welcome students and staff back for the 2023 school year. So great to see everybody. We do have a full agenda this evening. We have 4 different reports. But I'd like to add one quick item to the superintendent's report section. We have a handful of people from CSEF that are with us tonight. The CSEF president and I have been emailing over the last couple days, making sure we have room scheduled for the next meetings. And she had asked for a couple minutes this evening. So Cheryl Clements, would you want to come up to the microphone? Again, not on the agenda, but appreciate having you and your team with us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Fram, for giving CSEF this opportunity to present this long overdue award. Before I ask Vic Martucci, the original CSEF president, to present this, I just want to first say thank you to Mr. Wright and some of the tech teachers who made a beautiful box to store the CSEF award. So Vic Martucci is going to present the award tonight. And I will always think of Vic as the CSEF president, which, by the way, you're welcome to come back at any time you want. But at the time, which was almost 10 years ago now, when the school budget did not pass, and many of us were thinking, you know, what are we going to do now, and what is it that we can do? Vic and Dawn had ideas, plans, and goals. And this led to the creation of CSEF. And these 2 people, with the help of other parents and community members and businesses, put their ideas and their actions into, they put their ideas and plans into actions to raise enough money to put all the sports and clubs back. And what was lost was all brought back. So I know personally when you work with Dawn and Vic, you get things done. So I want to just pass it off to Vic now so he can present the award.
Thanks, Cheryl. Good evening. A lot of new faces up here from when we started CSEF. Michael Fuchs was, I believe, the only board member that was on the board back then. But it was indeed a crisis. The school budget was voted down in May of 2013. And a whole range of extracurricular activities, programs, and athletic programs were cut. And it amounted to about $200,000. And that's when I met Dawn Snyder. And truth be told, I might have been the first president of CSEF, but Dawn was its leader. Every battle requires a general. Those of us that know Dawn know that she's a general, and she had a passion and a desire and a will to make CSEF a success. Failure was not going to be an option. And we were able to raise $200,000 in a very short period of time, and we're proud to say that not one of those programs, not one of those athletic teams were cut, in large measure because of Dawn's dedication and her hard work and her passion. So when I think of CSEF, it's a testament to Dawn Snyder. That was her vision. I was along for the ride, proud to say I was along for the ride. And maybe the best thing that came out of it for me was the new friendships that I made, particularly my friendship with Dawn. I like to tell my kids that the best thing that you can do when you look back on your life to judge whether you were a success or not is this place a better place in some small way because of me and because of what I contributed. And I can say to you with absolute certainty that this school district, this place, is better because of Dawn Snyder. And I can't think of anyone that deserves this award more than Dawn. So Dawn, I don't know, are we supposed to bring this up to her, or is she going to come down here? But the box is as nice as the award. I mean, the tech department did a great job with this.
And that's why he was the president. He always had the best words.
I don't need a microphone. I got a big enough mouth. This says, CSEF champion Dawn Snyder in recognition of his passion and dedication to the Clarence School
We'll do one last round of applause. All right, thank you again, Cheryl, Vic, Chris, and Julie for being here tonight, and congratulations, Dawn, on a well-deserved honor and recognition. We have 3 other reports this evening. First up, we have our Clarence Middle School update. I see we have Ashley Dreibelbis, Beth Chalice with us tonight, and they hosted a board tour this morning. So thank you for being with us this evening. And Ashley, I will turn it over to you.
We are thrilled to be here, sharing all the good work that's going on at the middle school. I'm grateful to have Beth by my side as we give this presentation. So the first thing on our presentation is under the teaching and learning category. Beth's in charge of the clicker. Okay, so our 3 main bullet points that we want to cover are our faculty meetings. So you can see the bottom picture. It's kind of a point of pride for Beth and myself. We had the opportunity to present at the SANES conference this October regarding our faculty meeting setup. We basically last year, when we couldn't put everybody in a room together because of distancing and all of that stuff, came up with a new way of running our faculty meetings where we put all of our teachers in groups of 5 to 7 people. We've got 16 classrooms. It starts at 7:50 in the morning. We give a pear deck, which is a presentation that you can run virtually, and teachers interact with one another in a classroom. Last year, our professional development was mainly around our change in our HQ programming, which we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as supporting our students with their SEL support because of the pandemic last year. It was great. It was awesome. Teachers shared information with each other, shared what they were doing in the classroom, and also provided resources for one another. That was wonderful. We are now also working with our new teachers, providing them professional development in a meeting each month, And we've moved our department chairs from really kind of being communicators and relaying information back and forth to their departments to being the instructional leaders that they are and working with us to provide professional development, talk about what teachers need. So it's been a really great way to provide our faculty members support so that they can do what's best by our students. Another point of pride for us is Dr. Hunter's work. So Dr. Javon Hunter started working with us last year. His work's pretty informal. He comes and he meets with our different ELA and social studies departments, either on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, depending on their needs. He works on new projects with them or helps them design some units or lessons, talks through different texts, and he's been a really big support for them. So that middle picture, it's Netflix. It's actually our 7th grade social studies students were able to make Netflix presentations about your everyday citizen during the American Revolution. So it was a way to engage students and to learn about people in history that you don't typically hear about. So that was really successful. They're actually going to do it this year during the Civil War. And then the other church teaching and learning thing that we wanted to celebrate here tonight, you can see the picture, you pretty much can see Bill's jerseys, which is probably poor planning for tonight. But what you can't see are the little people in the front of the room are our high schoolers. So unfortunately last year we had 2 FACS teachers retire, and despite our best efforts and posting the job multiple times, we were able to get 1 FACS teacher. He's been wonderful, but instead of running FACS in 8th grade, we run a business class now. And it's been a great bridge from the high school to the middle school. So the people in the picture are some of our high school academy students who came down to present to our business students last month. Because of this, we actually have all the academies coming this Friday to speak to all of our 8th graders in an assembly. So that's been a really nice collaborative effort with the high school. Building safety, we have SRO DeZerba. If you walk through the middle school on any given day, you will see him. He is one of our best relationship builders in the school. He's at nearly every lunch. He knows all the kids. Some of them he drove on a bus when they were young, and he's a really big asset to us as administrators when we're dealing with issues that surface. In terms of our front entrance, you were here today. You noticed that our front entrance is in working condition. Our system there has really been ironed out. Kat Tucko, who's in the front, she does a great job managing that area. We appreciate having that space. One thing that we're working on is updating our drill procedures to empower adults. So we have kind of seen over the years that when there are drills, lockdown fire drills, everyone looks to the administrators to lead those things, and we really are working on trying to get our adults in the building to feel like they can take control in a situation and they don't need to look to somebody to lead. An example of this, you will see Mr. Lauer and Mrs. Tudor holding fire symbols, and we've been doing things even as simple as putting people in blocking entrances just so people are thinking on their toes and not just relying on typical protocols. Social and emotional. What we did this year, we had a pupil personnel services audit. We teamed up with the curriculum office. Kristen has Tricia Fay from Erie Wombosies who came in and works with us. And basically our PPS staff has expanded by a psychologist and a social worker, and Tricia tailed all of them each for half of a day. She created a survey for our faculty, and it was a way for us to kind of gauge what everybody was doing, because over the years our counselors had taken on a lot of the social worker role because we didn't have one. And as I expressed this morning, we are so thrilled with our social worker, and we really appreciate that that was added last year, but we really needed to figure out a way to redistribute some of the work. So we're currently in the process of working through that audit and the results of it and trying to make CMS a better place in terms of our house offices and the supports we provide for students. The board who were here this morning noticed that we have a new setup in the house offices. They're called kiosks. It's kind of like going to the doctor's office. So when kids enter a house office, they will sign in using a Google form. They'll say who they're there to see and why, and it's a great way for us on the back end to track how many students are coming down, what students are coming in, or which students are coming in more often than others, and it's a way for us to really have a good sense of what's going on with our social and emotional supports for students. I invited Beth here tonight. I encouraged her to come, much to her reluctancy to get up and speak, because Beth has done an incredible job with the 6th grade orientation program. She actually was the first, when we came back from the pandemic, it was the first time we had kids in any of our buildings. was when Beth ran our 6th grade orientation. So she's going to speak to this because I can't do it as much justice as she can.
Okay, so when I first stepped into this role a few years ago, the number one bit of feedback from parents and from kids was how can you help us transition from elementary to the secondary world in a little bit better of a fashion. So it's been an ongoing process, and there really are 4 phases to orienting kids and families to our building. And when you think about it, this is really the second big moment for parents in their educational career with kids. Kindergarten's the first one, we're the second, high school, and then post life after Clarence. So the first phase actually predates me in this role, and it's the 5th graders coming over to preview our musical. So it's the first time that the graduating class is actually together in one room. So we kind of pump that up with the 5th graders, but it's a low stakes event for them. It's high energy. They get to see the space. They get to take the bus ride over here so they can see that their elementary world isn't as far away to their new soon-to-be middle school world. And it's just a fun day for them to see, and especially those who are artistically inclined. It's fun for the kids to see, hey, I want to do that someday. So that's phase 1 that's been in there, predates me. Phase 2 happens in the springtime. It's our annual now meet and greet. So we have the 5th graders come back over here, and the whole event is now run by 8th graders. So the 8th graders, it's a Q&A panel. They answer questions live for the 5th graders. But this year we're changing it a little bit, where the 8th graders are going to run the presentation instead of me. So they're going to give a good picture of a day in the life of a 6th grader. So that's an add-on. And we keep 2 schools come at once, the other 2 come at a different day, just because of that. We want to model orientation, but because of that anxiety factor, so let's keep it smaller, intimate, and then we can spend more time with the kids. So at the end of the Q&A and at the end of a day in the life, the kids are pretty jazzed up, and so then our 8th graders act as tour guides and give them a brief tour of the building before they head back. We got a lot of great feedback from even 5th grade teachers last year, because every year we continue to reflect on what went well and what else can we add to really make the 5th graders feel welcomed here. So that's in the springtime, and then we have our orientation program in August, and we keep with that model. Half the class comes on one half day, the other half of the class comes on the second half day. That's one of the pictures up there. We have 16 teacher leaders, and the number one goal was to make it feel like a camp. We want it to be fun. We want the kids' first experience in our building to have a homey, warm, and welcoming feeling. So the kids rotate through 4 sessions taught by the teacher leaders. And they're not just 6th grade teachers either. We have other teachers from different grade levels. So then that gives students more friendly adults in the building that they can reach out to or see in the halls. The kids rotate through 4 sessions. One is about academic independence. One is about personal accountability, like how do I set up my locker? Let's practice the locks. Also then that rolls into what else will I be accountable for or have to keep track of here that I didn't have to last year. Then we also have a digital citizenship session where our leaders have really focused on the pitfalls of what can happen with social media when the kids start to be of that age and they get their first phones, what to avoid. And then we have our 4th session, which is really all about team building, getting to know ourselves, and then getting to know the building as well. It's a great event, full of energy, and it really kicks off the year in the right way. And then this year I added the 4th phase to this, which was changing the format of open house. It was a little bit, I'll be honest, it was a little bit of a big undertaking, simply because I put a lot of it on a one-way communication to parents from me. So there was about a 45-minute presentation with myself, my guidance counselor, and then 2 teacher leaders who happen to be parents in the district as well. So the whole point of restructuring open house is to give parents that information that's going to hit them head on as soon as day 1 starts. And the major message is, excuse me, conflict happens all of the time, every day in middle school. So how do we handle it? So I run through our DASA procedures, our behavior procedures, and I reassure parents that every adult in the building really has a series of questions, restorative questions that we ask kids. What happened? Who was impacted by it, and how do you want to repair the harm? So the focus of that piece of the presentation is really about conflict, to help our kids grow through. If we give them the skills now, then there's a better chance for them at the high school to be able to navigate those conflicts on their own. And then the other piece, besides the guidance counselor piece, the teacher leaders showcase Power School and Schoology. So the whole point to the parents, the message is, if you want to creep on your kids' grades, this is what you need to do. And that really is their first tutorial of the 2 digital programs, even though they do have access to their kids' report cards in elementary school. But this is the first time that we want parents to interact with those 2 interfaces in the same way that the kids do.
All right, last slide. So cultures and traditions, things that we're doing here, our headquarters programming went from 10 minutes to 20 minutes last year. It's been a great impact on the community. If you see our logo, it's 3 houses, 1 community. Our HQ time is really about the 1 community aspect and building relationships across the school. You'll see a picture up there of an 8th grader squatting down in the gym talking to a 6th grader. We've added a new component to our HQ this year called collabs, where we've paired 2 different grade level headquarters. They get together twice a month, play games, get to know one another in the spirit of community. We've also added grade level assemblies. So we used to do quarterly ones. Now we do one once a month during HQ. It's a quick 20-minute assembly. And one of the big focus areas, and you'll see the picture there kind of toward the bottom, is we're trying to get students as the leaders of those assemblies. So you go to any elementary school in this district and you see kids up front leading assemblies, leading morning program, and we don't want them to lose all of those leadership skills when they come here and just have adults talk to them. So that's been a real big focus of ours. We're still working on that. We want them to get to the point where they're planning the assemblies too. We're also recognizing student leaders. That's in the bottom right-hand corner. And then our final culture and tradition is collaborating with our PTO. So this year we had Dunk Tank Day up in the corner. You'll see a number of our teachers there. It was a fun way to kick off our assemblies. We also created Scoops for Scholars, which Chris Brophy is here in the room, and she did a great job helping us get that back going. It used to be Breakfast of Champions, but now we're calling it Scoop for Scholars, and we have ice cream instead of school French toast sticks, and it's been great. So we really appreciate our PTO and all that they do to help us build our culture and traditions. So with that being said, we really appreciate the forum and all the support that we receive from you.
Great. Thank you, Ashley and Beth. Any questions or comments from members of our board, from anything that Ashley and Beth had talked about tonight, or anything that you may have seen or heard about earlier in the day?
Just a great program this morning, seeing and hearing the programs, and doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley, do we still have the Rotary participate with the now Scoops for Scholars?
Yeah, the Rotary was there last year.
Nice.
Dennis, you have a background in middle school. Would I be accurate in saying that that age level can be a time where kids are finding themselves and trying to get comfortable and can be an anxious time for parents?
Absolutely, and it's a great time of change, and we talking about how learning to open the lockers and all, and a big building. It's just you make it very comfortable for them, and we appreciate that.
And I had that same sense looking at how you take a large facility, about 1,000 students, and get kids packed with support and make them feel a sense of belonging. And you just feel it from students, but from faculty and staff when you're in the building. And those are things that we shouldn't take for granted. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the program this morning and for being here tonight. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we're lucky to have members of our special education department with us this evening. We have Raylyn Hellman, we have Jill Sangbush, and we have Mary Jo Dunkel. So transitioning from our middle school presentation to our special education presentation. So welcome, Raylyn.
Right. Thank you for having us here tonight. It seems like it was a long time ago when I was here to be appointed for this role, and 6 months have gone by really fast. So what's happening in our office? I'm really happy to have an amazing team. So Mary Jo's been here for 6 years, and she's an incredible support in learning the district, and adding Jill as the second assistant has been incredible. I think we have a very similar vision and hopes for our special ed department, so I thank you for adding that position. So this is just a little bit about us. Jill is focusing mainly on the elementary area, Mary Jo mainly at the middle school and high school, and we have a lot that goes on in our office. One of our big charges when I started was more visibility, and we've been really focusing on that, being in buildings at least weekly, making sure that we have contacts with teachers, and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from administrators and teachers about being there, being seen, being able to problem solve and brainstorm with them, and so that has been really powerful. And our focus, we're a new team, so coming into a much bigger district than I came from, it's really building relationships and figuring out how to communicate and collaborate across buildings and with multiple groups of people. So with our related service providers, with special education teachers, with curriculum, with building leaders, and we're building that. I actually stole some ideas from Ashley and Beth because I got to see them at Saney's and then again at an administrative meeting sharing some communication tools that they use to make sure we're communicating regularly with our teachers and providers. And then analyzing our programs. So we have a full continuum of services here, but our kids are changing and needs are different than they were even 5 years ago. So it's making sure we have the right programs in place to meet the needs of our kiddos and the problems they're presenting. And then making sure that we have procedures in place to kind of streamline. There's a lot of paperwork in special ed. They did a Paperwork Reduction Act about 10 years ago, but I haven't seen any impact from that yet. So trying to streamline some of our procedures and maintain that compliance that both the state and federal governments look for. And then just talking about numbers. So our preschool numbers, very interestingly, have increased pretty significantly from 21-22 to 22-23, and we're continuing to get a lot of new referrals at the preschool level. And our kiddos are coming younger with bigger behavior problems. That's a really new need around preschool. So we are seeing that increase. At the same time, we're seeing a decrease in programs out there. So we're working to figure out solutions to some of those concerns that are coming up. Our enrollment over the years for all students is going down, and our numbers of kiddos with disabilities is staying the same. So our percentage of students classified is increasing, although the numbers are staying the same. So we've gone from 13% in 1920 to about 14.5% classification rate, but again, similar numbers, just a lower overall population. And as that percentage goes up, it does change the compositions of classrooms and the supports that teachers need to work with all of the students. And our 504 referrals have also gone up quite a bit, and they continue to. We're continuing to get referrals for 504s, and that is mainly around mental health concerns of our students. So students with increasing anxiety or depression, and a lot of that can be attributed to the pandemic. So more social issues, social anxiety about being back in groups, and kids that are needing that extra support to be successful in the classroom. And we've had some amazing celebrations. So it's been 6 months. We have amazingly talented faculty and staff, and it's been fun to get to meet them and see them interacting with students. I'm thrilled with our office. I could not have asked for 2 better partners in the office to help problem solve and plan and share ideas. It's been incredible. We have just some really neat kids. It's really fun being down the hall from our 1211 and getting to have them come in with their Halloween costumes on or what they're doing for Christmas, and just seeing all of the opportunities that the kids are provided. We've loved being in buildings and schools, and it was funny, the first day of school, it was weird because I wasn't in a lot of classrooms, and I'm used to that. And the second day, Jill and I both started in a building, and we walked in close to the same time, and we were like, we got to see kids today. So we're really liking that part of it. That's the best part of what we do. We've had some amazing contacts with parents. So lots of questions and wanting to meet with us, sharing ideas, and that's really important too, because we're making some pretty big decisions at CSE meetings sometimes, and having that relationship and that they feel safe calling us and asking the questions, I think, is really important. The administrative team has been incredible. So I am so grateful to the building leaders, to Kristen, who has kind of helped us integrate into the district and really being a part of some of the gen ed things that can help prevent some of the special ed things from happening. Problem solving with teams, that's been awesome, to get a new student or a student who's struggling with certain things and being able to sit down and figure it out. And then streamlining systems and structures. Like we have one form that we fill out, well, 3 forms that we fill out the exact same information on at CSE meetings, and we've been able to get rid of 2 of them, so we only have 1. And those are the things we're working through right now when we ask, well, why do we have 3 forms that say the same thing? And it's just always been that way, and we can make those changes to save time and some trees along the way too. And we're really looking at priority areas. The state has changed graduation options for kids with disabilities extensively over the last 5 years, and making sure our programs are in alignment with that so that more of our students with disabilities can get local and hopefully Regents diplomas. Increasing co-planning time for our co-teachers is really important for us, and figuring out how scheduling can support that. Reducing due process complaints. I told Matt my New Year's resolution was that I didn't want to speak to attorneys anymore, and I haven't been able to meet it just yet, but I'm hoping that that declines as we build relationships with families. And having an inclusive mindset that all of our kids are all of our kids, and that every child has the same right to an education and high expectations. Looking at revenue and ways we can build revenue in special education, decreasing out-of-district placements, and there are 2 reasons for that. 1, I believe we can provide the best education anywhere, and 2, a lot of them are really struggling with staffing, and some of our neediest children are the children that are having 4 or 5 teachers a year because of turnover, and so it's creating bigger disabilities in some instances than it is helping. Looking at preschool, we just had a meeting today where we heard from preschool providers that they don't have any openings, and some of them have over 100 children on a waiting list. And so how can we provide services to the students, preschool students in Clarence that need that extra support? That goes a long way in helping our kindergarten teachers and then helping special ed school-age programming. And then looking at behavior. I'm sure you've all heard about behaviors increasing in our classrooms, and really providing support to teachers and our counselors and our families around behavior. I know you've heard a lot about dyslexia and some specific learning disabilities in reading, and we have done some things. Actually, some of these started before I got here by having all of our primary teachers trained in Phonics First, which is really that Tier 1 Orton-Gillingham approach to teaching phonics and decoding skills. We're adding different screening tools to look more closely at the kiddos that are having those needs. Building our menu of intervention options. So what can our reading teachers do, and then what additional training do our special ed teachers need for the kiddos that rise to that level? And really looking at our testing protocol. So when we are assessing children to qualify for special education, are we looking at all of the right areas? So our psychologists have been building a better bank of assessments to look specifically in the areas of reading, and then really making sure we're progress monitoring so that we make sure kids are making the growth they need to make, and if not, changing our instructional practice to address that. And so we're entering annual review time, which is the craziest, busiest time in a special ed office. And we're working with every building to kind of clarify criteria for programs and aids support, defining accommodations. We've had great conversations with teachers about what do they need to support our students, and those conversations have been great around what professional development and how they can identify the things that kids need on their IEPs, looking at all of our programs, and we're really excited. This isn't going to be a lifelong practice, but this year our office is going to run all the annual reviews as an opportunity to get to know more families and see the teachers in that role. It's really hard in a district this big to get to meet all of the families, so by being present at those meetings this year, we're hoping to build our knowledge and understanding of the families and the kids in the district. Thank you again for having us, and it's been a very exciting first half of my first year.
Great, thanks, Raylyn. Any questions from board members on the presentation this morning or the comments here this evening? There's an educator named Bill Daggett who talks about doing work in countries all over the world and says if you're looking for the very best public education system, it's here in the United States, and it's not because of the highest standards, it's because of the country's commitment to educating every child. And so that means having a whole bunch of programs and services so that we can meet the needs of all students. And no department in our district does more of that than our special education department. And it's not easy work. Oftentimes when students are referred to your office, it's because things aren't going well. And there can be issues of frustration and acceptance and anger, and oftentimes it's your team that's helping families and students sort through those things. And it can be a very confusing world. You alluded to that this evening with lots of regulations and paperwork and legal issues that come up. And so just wanted to thank you all for your leadership and your work, and for the faculty and staff that you work with. They do incredible work for kids of this community. So thank you again for starting the day with us, for the coffee and donuts that you brought, and for being with us this evening. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are 2 down with 2 to go. This is the time of year when, if you're following our reports and updates at board meetings, we start to shift from really program-heavy reports to focusing more on finance and budget. We have a series of financial reports and budget study sessions. This is the first of those sessions, and would like to thank Dr. Grupka for being with us this evening and talking a little bit about, as we move into this budget season, what we know, what we don't know, and what our process will be as we put together a proposed spending plan for next year. So, Patty, thanks for sharing some things with us this evening.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Tonight we're going to talk about the budget in more general terms. We're not really going to look at numbers because our numbers are not out yet. But we'll talk a little bit about the timeline, some of the proposals, both from the governor and the Board of Regents, and just some general information about where we see the budget going for next year. So first of all, I wanted you to take a look at our mission statement because it really is all about the kids. And I found this picture online, and if you take a look at the picture, it's respect, responsibility, and kindness. And our mission is to produce independent, lifelong learners who are responsible, contributing members of society. And I think this picture is just adorable, and it starts when they're little, and it goes to when they right
right through the rest of their life, hopefully. So here's our budget calendar timeline. And it says in October the budget process starts, and it has already started. So this year we are doing things just a bit differently. I've met with all the principals and administrators already. We are looking at this generally the same process as prior years. However, what we're doing is looking at impact forms. So we're looking at budgeting the things we need, not hoping for money to necessarily for money to be left over that we can do the things we needed with, but we need to budget for what we actually need during the school year. And then I've asked everyone to submit any impact item forms, which are items that weren't in last year's budget or in prior budgets. They're important to their program. If it's important to your program, we need to know about it ahead of time so we can plan for it. So those meetings have already happened. In December, we reviewed the budget with buildings and grounds. We've looked at some special ed items. We did get the first governor's budget. Pretty reasonable. I mean, she seems very school-friendly. Didn't seem to be any surprises. She wasn't talking about cuts across the board for categorical aid or any of the things the governor used to propose in the past. So I was kind of pleased to see what she put out as the initial budget, but that's not the true budget. We know in February there'll be another budget. And then, of course, around March 1st, we hope for the legislative budget, which is the true numbers. March 1st, we'll have the tax levy limit calculation due. Right now, I'm looking generally somewhere around 3.5% will be our limit. What we actually levy will be dependent on need. We have budget session 3 on March 13th, where we'll really go over the final numbers. On the 17th, we hope to adopt a budget. On the 8th, we'll have our budget hearing, and of course, May 16th, the vote. And the vote also includes the Board of Education elections. So our goal is always going to be to prepare a budget that's really fair to the taxpayers, but still maintains really the excellent and enhanced programs that we have here at Clarence. This community has always valued education, so we want to present a budget that includes all of the good things that we provide for students. We also, and I feel like I have to mention this, we have the lowest tax cap in this, or the lowest tax rate in this region, fully $4, $5, $6 lower than many of our local schools. So that's something I think as a board you should be proud of. We want to maintain existing programs and promote high levels of achievement while addressing learning loss and mental health. We did some great things with grant funds. We want to make sure that those grant funds are folded into this budget, or those positions. Some revenue assumptions. I think we're going to see a slight sales tax increase in next year's budget. We've had a little bit more this year. We know those numbers went down as a result of COVID. As the economy comes back, those numbers should come back up. The local revenue and tax levy, we will be keeping under the tax cap. We will see a slight one-year fund balance appropriation, I believe, due to that increase in transportation costs. This year, those were about $1 million above what they were in the prior year. That's not uncommon, and it's not unique to Clarence. New York State aid increases in transportation and building aid, and I believe we should see a fair increase in foundation aid next year. Our expense assumptions, we're looking at approximately 4.5% wage increases. Those are contractual increases, generally offset by a little bit of retirement breakage. I'm looking at approximate 4% supply increases. Some supply increases will be 0, some will be higher. And of course, that's a very early number because inflation may change that. There will be some transportation increases due to contracts for our transportation contracts. BOCES and special ed program increases usually have a slight increase every year. Health benefits and prescription, this is actually a bit of a higher number than we've seen in the past. It's 8.6%. It is really in keeping with regional increases. We've been very lucky here. We've kept them very, very low for a great number of years. We've seen increases around 1% and 2%. This cost is really driven by prescription. And there's just not, there's not a lot we can do about that, but it's not an unreasonable dollar amount for the region. Our debt service, so we had some debt fall off, and it fell off last year,
but it's going to be increasing again next year for the project that's still taking place now, so we just did some borrowing. So we're going to see about a $900,000 increase in debt service. $400,000 of that revenue we'll see, and then we might be able to use some bonded debt for that. This is next year will be our last year of our CARES funding. So our CARES funding supports our summer school at all levels. Some of our funding for affiliates that we use for mental health services, so service providers that we bring in, staff development, some of our technology needs, and then we added 12 positions. So we added math intervention specialists, reading specialists, learning assistants in our high school, and some additional psychologists and social workers. So we now have psychologists across the district and social workers in every building. These positions are critical to the well-being of our students. Our goal is to make sure we're able to capture those in future years' budgets. So we have approximately 2 years to make sure all of those positions are included in our budget, because that was our goal when we got these funds. I'm going to quickly go through some updates from Albany and the Board of Regents, because these are proposals. So where they land, we're not 100% sure, but I'm going to give you just the quick highlights of the proposals that apply to education. So the governor's proposal is to fully fund foundation aid. That's a $2.7 billion increase, or a minimum of 3%. So if you are already fully funded, you're looking at a 3%. However, that number, I think this year is also, from what I'm hearing, going to include some inflationary factors. She is proposing a full-day pre-K, high-impact tutoring programs, although those will be done on a set-aside basis. So we're not really sure what that looks like, if it's set aside just for high-need districts or if it's set aside and is part of your foundation aid. So we'll have to wait to see what that actually looks like when it comes out. College credit for high school students, she's looking to fund P-TECH programs, expanding mental health services for school-age children, including higher rates for Medicaid. In the last few years, we've seen Medicaid drop, so it will be an increase in Medicaid payments and quicker turnaround on services that students receive inside schools. This was not one of her education proposals, but it will impact educators. Annual increases to minimum wage. So while, we think of education as, teacher salaries and administrator salaries, many of our non-administrative staff are making very close to minimum wage. So if she's proposing annual increases to that, it will have an impact to schools and it will have an impact to our school. And I just think we need to be aware of that. Board of Regents proposals. They are also talking about fully funding the foundation aid formula. We are in the last year of a 3-year phase-in. So the same as the prior year, you would receive either your fully phased formula funds or a 3% minimum adjusted by the state sharing ratio. They're proposing a funding study to re-examine the foundation aid formula. It is a very old formula based off some pretty old numbers. They've been asking for this for several years and it hasn't gone through. Maybe this will be their year. Enrollment adjustment. They're actually looking at some new operating aid for schools who are having either 40 students or 2% enrollment increase. And that would be a one-time bump in your funds. And that's based truly just on enrollment. While many schools are seeing enrollment decline, there are some where they're increasing. They're looking at aiding zero-emission bus transition plans. So by 2027, we are supposed to stop buying gas buses and go to complete electric. By 2035, our entire fleet is supposed to be electric. That's every school across the state. But right now, they don't have a funding mechanism for it. So that would be a very big ask and important for schools. They're looking at supporting regional transportation. That's something districts have asked for a long time, but nobody's been willing to take on. They're looking at improving career and technical education programs and reorganizing aid changes. In addition, and I don't know if these would really be much effect for us, but they're asking for regional high schools. Those really do benefit the smaller districts, and statewide virtual or hybrid schools, and they really haven't proposed what exactly that might look like. So here's the Board of Regents timeline
In December, you're looking at the board meeting and vote on the final Region State aid proposals. In January, the executive budget was released, or will be released. On February 15th, there should be some updated estimates on the budget. And then, of course, in March, the legislative one House bill budget will be passed. We always hope for March 1st so that we have some time. And in April, there'll be an enacted budget released to the state. So what's next? We're going to continue monitoring the state's budget process, lobby for appropriate funds. We'll continue to monitor the budget we're currently in. And then we'll use and revise the federal funds as needed and maintain transparency and welcome any input or questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have a few. Just to clarify a few things that you said, and then maybe one additional question. I'll start with that one. Do we have, has the state released the TRS or ERS rates for next year yet, or when do we expect those?
I don't have those yet, and those should be out probably in about a month.
And those are on
TRS.
like a weighted average 5-year lagging of the returns, correct? So we're coming up, we're going to add a pretty bad year. So is there any indication if that's going to be up?
You know, if you look at the state website, they're feeling like even though it's been a bad year for the market as a whole, they don't feel like they've suffered the same loss. I did hear the governor and actually the state say that they put away some rainy day funds that they're using for this, and I don't know if any of them will be attributed to that. But I do feel like they probably did a little bit better. Governments and municipalities have to be very careful about where they can invest. So the investments that they're actually allowed to make aren't as risky as what you might see, you know, in people's homes.
And then you talked about, just in general terms, around the wage increase contractually that we're obligated. And then we have the breakage on retirements.
Yeah.
Is there a number that you're initially using? I know, Dr. Frame, I believe we have till February 1st for staff to elect for retirement or signal to us.
So we have till February 1st. I think a number we talked about across all groups was somewhere around 15. And the breakage varies depending on the length and the position. So I haven't really put an accurate number to that yet, because I really do want to wait and see what we have. Much will also depend on, like I said, how long they've been here and whether we're replacing or not, or how we're replacing.
Okay, fair enough. And then the last one, I guess, maybe is just an ask at the appropriate time through this process. I know you highlighted it. I'm sure the plan is to share it at some point. But obviously our, one of the key things we have to manage, not only this year, but in the 2 years ahead, is to make sure we are properly allocating funds to cover those positions we added that were initially funded for the grants. So I know at times we've understood, how many dollars we had been allocating. We had talked informally over a number of meetings on how we may start to phase that in. I guess, at whatever point in time, I look forward to reviewing that as part of a projection.
We will do that. I anticipate that at least 2/3 of those positions will be in next year's budget, and the following year we'll have absorbed them all into the budget. That's the goal, and I think that's achievable.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, the last year of the CARES Act is this coming budget year, not the current one.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Do you have an idea on what an electric bus costs versus a conventional?
Yeah, so the Bluebird buses that are on state bid are $397,000 for the bus. The charging station is about $100,000, and that's without the infrastructure of the study. So you would have to do the entire electrical infrastructure. So basically, you pay about $80,000 to have a study done, and then they tell you what it will cost to update the electrical components. So for some places are just they're ready to go. They can run the lines and be good to go. I've heard some people say that they were given a $90 million estimate just to have the electricity run to where they need it. So that study is really gonna that study will really tell us what we need to do and how we need to do it, and if it can be done. This is not without some early issues. It's in its infancy. I was actually at Lakeshore this morning. They have the first electric bus in this area, and they are really enjoying it. They did not pay for it because of their wealth ratio. They were able to get one for free. They put in their station, but it's not without concerns. I don't know what the full cost would be right now. I actually did put in an application to NYSERDA because they will pay for 75% and then or 80% of the study, and then you can get the rest, some of it through state aid. So we'll see if we get accepted for that, just to start the study and start thinking about it.
Thank you.
And a regular bus cost about $120. I'm sorry, I didn't share that with you.
Any final questions or comments? Patty, maybe just a couple things to emphasize, and just thank you for the presentation this evening. One is just we're in some ways the initial start of our budgeting process. So when you look at our anticipated revenues and expenditures, we're still waiting for a bit of information to complete the tax cap. We have the governor's proposal with regard to funding for schools and some of the things that she'd like to put those funds toward. We'll see the Assembly's proposal and the State Senate's proposal, and then they'll have to work on some final package. Just for folks that may have gone to the kitchen if they're watching at home to get a snack and come back and missed part of it and then said, holy smokes, there's hybrid schools and there's electric buses. These are things that are in the governor's initial proposal, and they'll sort themselves out as they go through the process. And a number of those items, I would anticipate that even if there is funding set aside at the state level, Clarence may or may not be eligible for some of those funds. So there's a lot of information that we'll have to watch for as we get further into this budgeting process. The second and final comment actually sort of piggybacks, Mike, on your question this evening with regard to absorbing some of the positions that we've put in the budget using the federal funds. If you pull up old video or minutes from our budget conversations last year and certainly the year before, they're really rich conversations about how can we support learning loss, how can we support the mental health needs of students. There were the addition of interventionist positions, the addition of mental health personnel, TOSA positions to support curriculum initiatives in the district. Those are all really good things for teaching and learning in Clarence, but you're right, long term we have to find a way to sustain those things in the future. Rather than having conversations about adding program and adding positions as we go into this budget process, really our focus is on how do we make these things sustainable. So how do we work with the programs and services that we offer so that we're maintaining them, we're strengthening them, but we're really not talking about adding on program and positions as we move through this budget cycle. So I think that's an important part of our process this year. It's saying how can we make things sustainable as we think toward the future. So. All right. Thank you again, Dr. Grupka. And as always, we've saved the best for last. Emmett, would you be willing to share what's going on in the high school with regard to our student body? And Emmett, you are darn near halfway through your senior year. I can't believe that it's midterm week already. Holy smokes, I'm not sure how that happened.
Yeah, it is really weird. I had two midterms this morning, LPC and then AP Latin, so I'm very tired. All right, hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Frame, for the introduction. I'm just going to report on some of the events that have happened in our school. NHS and Student Council ran a blood drive 2 weeks ago, and over 30 students in our school donated blood, and then I think some faculty as well donated blood, which is pretty cool. It's a ton of people. The Superintendent's Advisory Board met last week and discussed gym class makeup policies, amongst a few other things. One senior in my school ran a fundraiser for a charity called Sleep in Heavenly Peace as their service project for their senior year, and it was a $2 pajama day. Yeah, midterms are this week, and like I said, I just had to. My friend who was here earlier, but he has now left, he is in BOCES, and he was telling me about how just before Christmas break, he shadowed a zookeeper at the Buffalo Zoo, and he helped zookeeper do checkups on a bunch of different cows. And he was also telling me about how one of his friends is in a pilot training program and is learning how to fly planes. So I just wanted to bring a little attention to like the really cool things that you can do in the BOCES programs. All right, upcoming events and club plans. The Sleep Out is next Friday from 10 at night to 5 in the morning. The event is going to be raising money for 4 different charities: Meals on Wheels / Feed More Western New York, the Buffalo City Mission, Friends of Night People, and Little Portion of Friary. We are trying to raise $5,000, and participants are required to raise $25 and are encouraged to raise as much as they possibly can. The event is going to have a fun event at the top of each hour. For example, we are going to have soup at midnight just after our yoga session led by Mrs. Thome. And we're going to have hot chocolate, I think at 4 in the morning. We're playing a game of Capture the Flag, a bunch of fun events like that. Additionally, in order to sign up, participants are required to attend a cold weather informational meeting on February 1st, either before or after school. We are still looking for some teacher or parent volunteers who would be willing to supervise. The time slot we're looking for is 2 to 5 in the morning, which is, well, not very surprising. Not a lot of people want to sign up for that.
The sign-up sheet, you just pass it out to the board tonight. Send it down the row.
So, really, though, if anyone is interested, please reach out to me. We'd love your help. A lot of juniors are doing their SAT prep. I think there's an SAT in March, which a ton of people will be taking. And next week, Tuesday, is the NHS induction, so that will be quite a big event. Pretty much all college applications are closed. Many seniors have gotten their admissions back, gotten financial aid, and have chose where they want to go, although there are still many decisions which don't come out until March. The winter sports seasons are moving into their sectional territory. My indoor track team is doing really well, I can say. We have a bunch of athletes who are very competitive within our section and might even do pretty well at states. We have, I think, 7 or 8 kids who've qualified for sectional so far. I actually, I set a school record last week in the 55-meter hurdles, which I was pretty proud of. That was cool.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I didn't mention this at our last meeting, but the boys' basketball team was going to be running a can drive at one of their games, and they ended up doing that. The rifle team, several members of them have qualified for sectionals, and the team's doing pretty well overall. That is my report.
Great, thank you.
Is there any questions?
Yeah, you can sign me up from 2 to 5.
Yeah, really?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, cool.
He's up
Emmett.
anyway,
It's
usually.
officially on the record.
Emmett,
you go.
is the sleep out open to all high school students, or is it just a certain age group?
High school
I
students.
can't recall.
All high school students.
Okay.
Yeah, the last time it was my freshman year was the last time it happened, and I did it as a freshman. I think I'm the only person in student council who has ever done it before, which is really interesting.
Do you
Anything
have enough
else?
boxes? Do you have enough boxes?
I mean,
cover boxes?
yeah, we should be okay.
Okay.
It's a lot of boxes.
That's good.
It's great. Anything else?
Perfect. Nice job. Thanks, Emmett, as always. All right, Mr. Fuchs, that is it for the superintendent's report section of the meeting this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Frame and everyone. Next up, public comment session. We did not have anybody sign up. I will just, for those who might be watching the recording and not in attendance this evening, for the future reference, the protocols around public comment haven't changed, but we did change the sign-up process. So we had it this evening, and we'll have it at all future meetings, an opportunity to sign up as you enter the meeting hall. The only requirement is that you sign up before the start of the meeting so that we can gather the name information up here to the board table to facilitate an orderly meeting. But it's a very simple card. Just check the box. It'll allow for us to have the name of every speaker as well as a contact email. So if we have to follow up with information, it'll be readily available to us. So with that, I'd move forward. Dr. Grubka, the finances.
Today, you'll be looking at the November financial payments and schedule of bills and check warrants. I will ask that you approve a transportation contract. This is actually a contract with a parent. We have a student who's placed out of district that we cannot find transportation for. So the parent has offered to drive at the IRS reimbursement rate. There is a list of community education stipends that we'll ask for approval for, and there is also a list of custodial bids. So the custodial bids were awarded. There are some that we are declining because they were not equivalent products, but we feel like we have a good list of custodial bids available.
Does anybody have any questions on the financials this evening? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve items F1 to F5.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Thank you. Mr. Michelle, do you want to step into personnel? We have instructional first.
For instructional this evening, P1 amends some previous actions, some minor date adjustments, as well as a mentor stipend. The mentor started a little sooner than previously approved. One teacher resignation, a prior appointment from the superintendent. We needed to quickly fill a teaching position at Harris Hill, and we were able to secure that person. Appointments for this evening, we have one high school special education teacher, a .2 TOSA for the seal of biliteracy. The demands of that program have become great, so this person is going to be able to help us during their normal workday and be able to facilitate that program. A TOSA for a middle school dean. Congratulations, Mr. Lauer. Regular sub for the middle school. Extracurricular appointments, some mentor positions, and some support stipends for the CMS musical. P5 lists all of our presentation compensation, and P6 are changes to our sub list. We've now reached 206 subs for the sub list this year. There's one addendum in front of you, and that is just the assignment of tutors that will start at the high school beginning at semester 2.
Any questions on the instructional section? Mr. Michelle, do you know on the tutors, is that they're just going to be in the library?
They'll be in the library in the morning, both before and after school.
Is there a stipend for the tutors?
Yes, so that there is, and these are grant-funded positions that Dr. Overholt had previously presented.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve items P1 to P6.
Make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Non-instructional?
Non-instructional, we have one termination, 2 resignations. Request to return to employment, we had one of our teacher aides leave her aide position and serve as a regular sub in the art classroom. That teacher is now returning, so they will return to their aide position. 2 prior appointments, one was for a head bus driver that was in great need, as well as a substitute bus driver. Appointments this month, we have 1 clerical, 1 high school hall monitor, 2 bus drivers, 1 custodian. Informational items, just we're looking at the change in minimum wage that was enacted on January 1st. That'll only affect our lifeguards. One of our clerks is moving from a 12-month position to a 10-month position in the same building, and P13 is changes to our sublist.
Any questions on non-instructional items? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve item P7 through P13?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. That carries. Dr. Frame, we have a collection of special needs and student activity reports.
We do. Nothing out of the ordinary. I believe that our CSE team met and reviewed the programs and services of 38 students, and our CPSE team met and reviewed the programs and services for 19 students, and again, nothing out of the ordinary.
Does anybody have any questions on items S1 and S2? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve those 2 items?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tricia. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, James. All those in favor? Aye. That carries. All right, next up, board development and associated policy. A number of items in here this evening. A couple field trips.
Yeah, 3 different field trips. The first one on the list is the CHS music program to Disney World, which is a trip that runs every few years. And then there are a couple smaller trips where small groups of students would go to Syracuse for an overnight at, I believe, a director's conference. So 3 different field trips as part of this section of the agenda. At our last meeting, there was a question asked about our policy review process here in the district, and we talked about folks thinking about it, reflecting about it, and then having a conversation this evening. So just to maybe frame the conversation, we all know that when a governance team is elected at the school level, one of their primary responsibilities is to write and approve policy. Most districts also would recognize that the bulk of policies that are adopted because there's some law or some regulation requiring that they be approved in a district. And instead of dramatically writing a policy or rewriting a policy, oftentimes it's tweaking them or it's forming them so that they fit a local school community. So just a couple comments maybe on how Clarence has historically reviewed and adopted policy. The first point would be most districts use a policy service. There are 2 major services in New York State. There's one out of Erie 1 BOCES, and there's one that is run by NYSBA. Some districts will also use school attorneys from time to time as they craft and finalize policy, but they typically will rely on those policy services and the experts that work in those different services. There are some districts that essentially will approve all policies that are written by those policy services. So every time there's a state law or regulation of substance that governs something in school, a policy service, if they come out with a written policy, the district will adopt it, whether or not they need to. There are a handful, it's something like 50 policies that in New York State, public schools have to have these mandated policies. And so Clarence has really focused on adopting and crafting and approving those required policies and not adopting all policies that come out, because if it's something that's written into law or regulation, the district has to follow it anyway, whether or not it's written in policy. So you'll see some districts with much thicker policy manuals than what we have here in Clarence, and the reason is the focus has been historically on just those required policies or other ones that are significant for the district, not all policies that are created by these services. So that's maybe the first point I would make. The second point I would make is that when school boards typically review policies, they'll do it in one of 2 ways. One, they'll have a policy committee, so a subsection of the board that will meet periodically. They'll do a deep dive into policy, and then they'll make recommendations to the full board, or a district will have a full board review policies. My understanding is that historically, Clarence has used an approach where on a regular basis, the full board will do a first read and a second read and adopt policies. So they'll ask questions and make recommendations and modifications in that full board process, not using a separate committee to do that work. And then the third and final just comment that I wanted to make was, in addition to the degree to which we adopt all policies, how we review them, it's how we want to work our way through the policy manual or review policy. So a couple different options. There are some boards that say, you know what, we have maybe 10, maybe 12, maybe 20 meetings a year. We're going to divide up different sections of the policy manual, and we're going to review a certain number of policies at every meeting. So that is a practice that many districts use. Other districts tend to look at the policy revisions and new policies that come out. So for example, Erie 1 BOCES will put out on a monthly basis revised policies for districts to consider. So rather than go back to the policy manual and review certain sections at every meeting, they'll really focus on those policies that come out from a service or from their attorneys. Maybe the last thing that would happen with how districts pick policies to review is they'll look at, are there certain things that are going on in a school community that would cause a school board to review a specific policy. So for example, this evening we're going to talk a little bit about policy 7132, which involves non-resident students. There wasn't a revision at the state level or one of our policy services It was a question that was raised at our previous board meeting, and I was asked to do a little bit of information gathering to come back for a conversation. So that might be an example of this last way of looking at policy. So hopefully that sort of helps to frame some of our options in terms of which policies we review, how we review them, with regard to the structure of the board, and then how we pick those policies to review as we move through the year. So we'll sort of open it up to the board for conversation, just acknowledging up front that we typically have focused on those policies that are legally required. We've used a full board approach in the past. And aside from doing a really comprehensive review a couple years ago, I believe that Clarence has focused on the updates that have come from Erie 1 BOCES, as well as policy questions that have come up over the course of a school year. And the really thorough review of the whole policy manual was an initiative that happened maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, something like that. So again, I'll open it up to the board for conversation and guidance in this area.
I will add, just for the benefit of the board, I went with my daughter to a Williamsville School Board meeting the other day to fulfill a public meeting requirements, part of the social studies curriculum. Anyways, they actually did touch on this subject during the meeting. They were going through a process similar to what we as a board had done roughly 4 years ago, which was reviewing sections at a time. It sounds like the cycle since they last did their full review was even longer ago. They referenced, I believe, 2009 in some of their policies was the last time that they were formally adopted. And the way their approach was, I guess I might characterize it as somewhat of a hybrid, in that they were doing them in full blocks, but there was not individuals on the board that were directly assigned to a policy committee. They asked for 2 board volunteers for each section, and it seemed like, based on the discussion, they were cycling through and kind of taking turns as they went through the process. So I will say for us, I was here when we went through the last revision process. I thought it worked fairly well. It did lean on the district office staff considerably and policy services to provide for the initial updates that were recommended for the 1,000, 2,000 sections. And then we as a full board went through our 2 to 3 month cycle of reviewing, discussing, and then ultimately adopting. So,
Mike, I'll weigh in. I liked the way that we did it. I think it's beneficial for all of us to be able to review those policies on an ongoing basis. So I would recommend returning to the way we did it.
I too, I did like that. We all had input. We all saw the changes that were being proposed as opposed to just the ultimate proposal. I think the question in my mind is how frequently do we do this? It is a fairly intensive process. I don't know if we do it every year, every 2 years, if there's less change that we'd have to sort through, or if it would be just as much work each and every year if we were to do that. So, and obviously I'd still propose we deal with the one-offs as they come up as needed. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think using the BOCES model is a good one, because we know it's consistent with what's being proposed across the area. So that was helpful, seeing that.
I would agree.
And I would have to believe if we did it more often, we'd see less changes, right?
I think so.
It'd be less time consuming than the last time.
Okay. So perhaps we can discuss the most expeditious way to kind of step into this.
Yeah.
If we start with the 1,000 series again, but it doesn't have to be September of next year, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily need to be next month either. We do have the budget process well underway, which I know consumes a lot of resources in district office, getting things finalized.
Yeah. The good news is that the thorough review the district did several years ago has put Clarence in pretty good shape. And so we had gone back this summer and just taken a look at our mandated policies. Do we have the most current versions adopted? And By and large, we do. I think we had adopted a policy or two this fall that wasn't. A more current version had come out, but we're in pretty good shape. A lot of attorneys will say when you're going to do a review and you have to start somewhere, sometimes the obvious place is the 100s, but they'll say it probably makes sense to start in the student section or the personnel section, just because you'll tend to get issues that come up in those sections more than others. So that may be something to consider as we move forward. But sounds like just getting into a regular rhythm where we're reviewing different sections on an ongoing basis, in addition to the updates that come out of our policy service. So.
I think that would be good.
Great.
And Matt, just to clarify as we move on, the policies that you have on here today are being recommended because we didn't have them or because they were updated?
A combination. So there are a couple different policies that are updates of existing policies and a couple new ones that have come out or are required. Okay. So let's see. I'd like to talk in a little bit more detail about B5, which is discussion policy 7132, non-resident students, and just acknowledge that the policy is coming after that. It's a second read in their action items. This evening we'd had a chance to take a closer look at them at our previous meeting. So just to take us back to December, there was a question that had come up about our policy regarding non-resident students. For folks that are not familiar with that policy, it talks about the fact that if you are not a resident of the Clarence Central School District, you can make a request to come to the district. It would be considered by the school superintendent, but if you were to attend, you'd have to pay tuition. The tuition rates are established at our reorganizational meeting in July, and they are based on a calculation that is put out by New York State. And it talks about that same thing for employees, that if they wish to bring their children to the district, if they're a non-resident employee, then they would have to pay those tuition rates that are established at our July reorganizational meeting. So the question that came up at our last board meeting in December was, should we consider a policy where the children of non-resident employees could attend the school tuition-free. So that is something that you'll see in different pockets of the state. So for example, there are certain areas where you'll find districts that essentially have open enrollment policies where as long as you can transport your child, you can enroll them, and it doesn't matter where your district of residence is. Those tend to be districts that have are experiencing population decline. So they've seen the population in their school districts go down pretty significantly. And so this has been a way for them to keep their enrollment as steady as possible. So that is one type of policy or contractual provision that you'll see in some pockets of the state. A second one is that you will see some districts that don't allow open enrollment for any non-resident child, but you'll see provisions in either policy or contracts that allow for the children of non-resident employees to send their children to the school district either tuition-free or at a reduced rate. And then you'll see examples of what we have in Clarence where people would have to pay for that tuition. So at our December meeting, there was an initial conversation, and our governance team asked me to do a little bit of homework as we considered this section of our non-resident policy with regard to the children of non-resident employees. And I wanted to share some of what I found. So just to guide our conversation this evening, I want to share some data from a survey that was sent to Erie County and Niagara County schools, some information that was collected from faculty and staff here in Clarence, some basic financial impact. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but it was something that was asked about by a couple different board members, and then just to refer to some potential policy language that we could consider. So I had shared a survey with Erie County and Niagara County school superintendents and asked that if they had a contract or a section of their policy manual that allowed for the tuition-free enrollment of children of non-resident employees, if they would complete the survey. I don't know for sure if there are other Erie or Niagara County schools that allow that. 6 different school superintendents did fill out the survey. You can see those 6 school districts listed off to the left-hand column. The ones that are probably most similar to us in size would be the Orchard Park Central School District, Depew, and Hamburg. A couple of the other school districts are a little bit smaller than we are here in Clarence. You can see that, that there's a mix of how the policy is memorialized and communicated. In some districts, it is bargained into collective bargaining agreements, or in policy, or a combination of the two. So you can see that it's a bit of a mix. And then I did ask area school superintendents, has it had a positive impact on their school community? And you can see that folks answer that it's either had a somewhat or a very positive impact on their organization. So of the 6 individuals that responded to the survey. I sent a second survey out to members of our CTA, our CSEA, and our CAA, so our 3 bargaining units here in Clarence, just to get a sense of if we did make a modification to our policy, how many families might be interested. So this was an anonymous survey. It was non-binding, but just getting us some helpful data to consider. So you'll see that we did have members of all 3 of our bargaining associations indicate that there was some level of interest. 45 individuals responded to the survey. You can see that I'd asked about number of children. So is it 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, et cetera. Probably the most important question, however, was a question that asked people to respond about grade level. And so if you look at this bar chart, this bar graph, you can see kindergarten through 12th grade asking CTA members, CAA members, CSEA members about if they had a non-resident child that they would consider enrolling in the district, what grade they would fall into for next school year. And you'll actually see quite a swing. So for example, at the kindergarten level, there, again, based on this survey, 14 students, so children of non-resident employees who would be interested in enrolling for next year, drops down to 2 for first and second grade. It bumps back up to 8, 7, 6. So you can see that it's not a consistent number that would go K through 12. It does differ based on the grade level. A couple different board members had asked about the financial impact if we would consider changing the policy. It's a tough and complicated question to answer, but I'd like to maybe point out a couple things. Is that one, and it's a reason that a number of school districts in New York State have open enrollment policies or would consider this, and the reason is that every student that you have enrolled in your district is a factor that's calculated into the state aid formula. And so there actually is a line in our state aid information that talks about the amount we'd receive in foundation aid per pupil. And so for this current year, it's just over $3,000. We'd anticipate it going up a bit next year. So for example, if we had non-resident children enroll, it wouldn't have any impact on the revenue that's raised locally through property taxes. What we would expect to see is a bit more information coming to us in the form of foundation aid. If a student has an IEP, then they would be factored into this formula differently, but there also could be a different expense for needed programs and services. So that certainly is something that we would want to consider. So maybe just a general comment about the basic financial impact. If a district considered a policy that said we would consider the enrollment of non-resident children as long as space allowed, if you said, jeepers, we've got 16 students in this 4th grade class, we could have 2 or 3 more and we wouldn't need to hire an additional teacher, there wouldn't be many more supplies required, then there is the potential that the district could make out financially by factoring those enrolled children into this foundation formula, and we could see a bit more foundation aid. The concern would be this, that if a student enrolled in, let's say, 1st or 2nd grade and they're experiencing a learning disability and they were classified and they required, let's say, a one-on-one aid or an outside placement or speech, PT, OT services, those could come at the district's expense, and it wouldn't be legal or morally appropriate to say we're going to meet the educational needs of this student, but not this child because they have some unique needs. So I wouldn't say with confidence that a policy change is something that would put Clarence ahead financially or would be break even. I think there is a chance that in the long run it would come with an additional expense to local taxpayers, and that's something that is impossible to predict at this point in time.
And how about, the room? I mean, you go back to the bar chart.
Yeah.
We talk about having available space. 14 kindergartners seem like a lot.
So there are three concerns that I would have about this policy in Clarence, and I guess I want to be very clear about this. I think that allowing the children of non-resident employees to attend is a really good thing for a school community with regard to increasing levels of investment for members of the faculty and staff. I think it's something that can help with work satisfaction. I think it can help with the recruitment and retention of teachers, with support staff members, with administrators at a point in time where we're seeing school districts struggle across the state. There are three concerns that lead me to believe that it's not in the district's interest at this particular point in time. The first has to do with cost, and I just shared that information. There would be an initial addition in terms of foundation aid. My guess is that there would be an expense to local taxpayers just based on programs and services and supports that would be needed for students. So my first concern would be a financial concern. My second concern would be a space concern. So when we look at average class size in our elementary schools, Clarence is not a school district that is experiencing a population decline. Clarence is a school district that anticipates a slight increase moving forward. And we're already looking at elementary classrooms at our kindergarten through fifth grade level that on an annual basis generally go from high teens to maybe mid-20s. So if we're talking about 15, 16 sections of kindergarten across the district, for example, and there's an average student number of 20 students in those sections right now, if we were to consider allowing 14 additional students in, that would increase the class size if you did it equally across all the buildings and all the classrooms. So if you were a school district that had small class sizes and was experiencing enrollment challenges, it might make sense. I'm concerned that we have years when we have large class sizes, we're experiencing growth, and there wouldn't be the space in terms of classroom space or the resources for staffing that would be required. My third concern would be this, is that because our class sizes push the limits of what our taxpayers, our families, our caregivers, our community members would expect in Clarence, it's a tough policy to operationalize. So for example, if a member of our teaching faculty or support staff were to put a request in, let's say July 1st, for their child to enroll for the fall in September, if you track school enrollments over the course of the summer, there usually will be a steady stream, but there's typically an end of August surge where people are doing some last minute moving and enrolling their kids for the school year. So even if we had approved the enrollment of a non-resident child at the beginning of July, my concern would be to operationalize it once you had approved it and made that commitment. If you move through the summer and you have 6, 8 families move into the community with young children, we would be at a point where our class sizes would be beyond what we think is appropriate in a teaching and learning situation that our community expects and that we want to provide. So there are three real concerns that I have. The first would be cost. The second would be class size. And the third would be just a challenge to operationalizing Clarence. And again, I want to go back and just say I think this is a really good thing for a school district. I can in good conscience recommend that we make a language change at this point in time because of those concerns that I had just articulated. I think it's good that we talked about it. I think it's good that we did our homework and have reviewed the information. But again, I'm not sure that we're positioned to move forward with this in a way that makes sense for the school district. I don't know if there are questions or concerns from board members.
I agree.
Okay. So at this point, unless there are concerns, I would just leave it as an informational item. We wouldn't move it on to a first and second read. Again, something worth considering, but to not move forward with it at this particular point in time.
I agree.
Thank you for all the research you do.
Yes.
And that's it, Mr. Fuchs, in terms of board development policy updates this evening.
Okay, so just to reiterate some of the opening comments, just what's on the official action list for us this evening. We have 3 field trips, one, well, all I believe related to the music program, one being the Disney trip for a year from now. Those were items B1 to B3. Item B4 and B5 are informational only, so no action to be taken. And then we have 5 new policies that we had our first read last month. This would be our second read and our action meeting. One is a new policy, and then the other 4 are updates to existing policies with recommended language changes. Does anybody have any questions on any of the items we're going to act on this evening? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve items B1 to B3 as well as B6 to B10?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That is approved. So the last item in our packet is an information on upcoming meetings and other events for members of the board and the cabinet. On February 1st, we have our annual teachers forum. And on February 13th is our next regularly scheduled board meeting, which will take place here in the middle school auditorium. Meeting announced time to begin is at 6 o'clock. We do anticipate having a half-hour executive session beforehand with public comment, or public meeting starting at 6:30. We will also have a building tour of the high school for those that can attend at 9 a.m. that day. Is there anything else from the board before I entertain a motion to adjourn? With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second.
A motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.